Alright guys, welcome to the part 3 of the Blood 2 tutorial. Today we're going to be going over leak files, what is a leak, and how you can use them to your advantage. A leak is anything that, it's hard to explain. Basically your level has to be sealed completely. If you were to fill up your world with water, nothing can get in or get out if you were to hold it in your hands and rotate it and spin it and even throw it around. A visibility leak is when you have a hole that goes to the void. Now, by void, I mean the blackness of the black over here. Game engines don't typically expect anything to be outside of the currently visible world and the bounding box of the world. If you do have items and objects outside, they typically won't even work. So keep that in mind. Also, if you have a visibility leak, the game engine can't properly determine what to render. So if you're way over here, and you can't see inside the room over here, why should the game engine even render that room? Well, if you have a visibility leak, it's going to. And keep in mind, when this game first came out, the maximum poly count for any scene basically was a maximum of, I would say, around 700 polygons at max, with multiple characters on screen, what's being rendered in the world, sprites being laid on top, and even the GUI, that's also polygons being rendered in front of you as well. So keep that in mind as well. And God forbid if you have any translucent effects on textures, that will even increase it further. The more draw calls you have, the slower the frame rate. Even in 2022, when this video was made, this engine is not optimized whatsoever. It uses DirectX 7, I believe. So it doesn't have any hardware calling. It's just going to render everything. Alright, so with that said, if we process this world right now with this specification down here, dash leak file, and then the name of the leak file, test.lek, you're going to hit OK. And we're going to notice up here when it does the visibility tree, does creating leak file test.lek couldn't find an outside leaf or the world is sealed correctly. And that's true because the world is sealed correctly. We didn't make any mistakes making it. And you'll see that all the polygons match up and seams are all, it looks pretty good. What we're going to do is we're going to create a leak so that we can find the leak and then tackle it a little bit later. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this polygon, this brush right here, and I'm going to just drag this like that. We made a big leak. Let's make it not so obvious. So I'm going to copy and paste in place. And now I have two brushes. I'm going to zoom all the way in and shrink my grid size down to 1. And I'm going to generate a leak. Just like this. Now you can't even see it. But if we zoom all the way in, we can see it. It's right there. You can see right through to the outside world. Alright, so now that we've generated a leak for ourselves, we're going to reprocess this world. Hit OK. And you'll see now it says creating leak file test.lek, but it no longer says there was no leak found. So perfect. We've tricked the engine, or not trick it, we just basically forced it to generate a leak for us. We're going to go into the game now, load up our map, and we can actually load this leak file. And what it'll do is it'll show us a vector, basically a trail of where we can find where this thing leaked from. So we're going to type in leak file, and it's all relative to the base path of the install folder. Gedit is in the bin folder, so bin test.lek, which is what we named our file, and there it is. So let's turn on no clip. Wow, come on fingers, let's work. Alright, you'll see that it points directly to our leak. But you'll notice something weird happened. The engine kind of hides it. We physically don't have a split here. And this is the problem with these really old engines, is that the floating point math isn't great, and it'll kind of just merge two polygon faces if it thinks it wants to or can. So it did some optimizations for us, but it wasn't really for the better because it's hiding things. Anyways, if we follow it all the way out, we can see that it starts at our game start point down here. It leaks out of the polygon right where we had our split, which is exactly on that seam. Kind of follows the world around a little bit, goes down here, loops around, does some weird things, comes back, goes up, and it goes to an object I created way out here, the outside definition file. Alright, so this basically showed us where our exact leak was on the polygon, on that brush. So now we're able to quickly go back into the editor, find it, and plug it back up. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and delete that file that it just created for us. Don't know why it's not in there, but that's fine. Process world. Where'd it go? Process world. Alright, hit OK. And couldn't find an outside leaf or the world is sealed correctly. So we've just fixed our leak. And that's all there is to it. Obviously when the world gets a little larger, finding leaks is going to get a lot harder. You might even have made a bad brush by accident. It might have an extra vertex on one of the faces by accident. Sometimes the editor does some really weird things. But it'll at least point you in the right direction to have a look at the brushes in and around that area. Now, if you have multiple leaks, it's going to go to the first one it finds first. So if you have 4, for example, it's going to pick the worst leak, the closest and worst one. After you fix that, you'll be processing the world again, and it'll generate another leak file. And then you follow that one. Then it'll generate another leak file, and then you'll follow that one. It's a tedious process. The easiest way to not do this, to not struggle with your map not sailing, is to simply build on the grid. Now we're able to move stuff off the grid, which we'll go over in a different video. As a general rule of thumb, don't go down to the grid size of 1. Leave it around, smallest you'd ever go is probably 8 or 4, especially in this game engine. 64 is a standard block size. I use those for walls, ceilings, floors. If you need finer detail, shrink it down a little bit more, but don't go down to onesies, twosies, because it's just going to cause so much confusion for you guys trying to seal your world up. And yeah, with that, part 4, we'll be using this base map. I'll be providing the .ed file for this. We're going to be cutting holes in walls, making doorways, cutting holes in floors, and looking at how you can manipulate brushes in a way that makes it easier for you to generate a world. This version of the editor does not have a split function on the polygons or the brush, so we can do things a little bit differently. Copy pasting basically and shrinking things. It's a little bit more involved, but the end result's the exact same. So hopefully I'll see you guys back in part 4, and we'll go from there. Thank you.